What's an unexpectedly well-paid job? I work at home as a closed captioner broadcaster for the news. I make my own schedule and make between $35 to $65 per hour depending on the job. Large investments to get started but significantly worth the payout. An office job but you're secretly on Reddit. That's my job. SHHHHH. Garbage collectors in New York are paid up to $112K, a solid salary considering you don't even need a degree. It sounds like a nice fallback plan for me. The waitlist for those, which you can only apply for a very short window once a year or so, is insanely long. Airline dispatcher. A girl I dated many years ago I met because she was living in my town training to be an airline dispatcher. There are just a handful of schools that teach it. I had no idea what an airline dispatcher was, let alone how much money they get paid. Dispatchers at FedEx can make $150,000 per year or more. It also gives you a lot of options to advance at an airline, like being station chief at an airline. The girl I dated had a dream to one day be Air France station chief in Tahiti. I don't know if she made it or not. The girl I dated had a dream to one day be Air France station chief in Tahiti. It's a magical place. Court reporting. Stenography is a tough skill to learn, but plenty of court reporters earn over $100K, and no college degree required, although most CRs will need to be certified. I'm currently in court reporting school and holy crap it is hard, but I enjoy it. I should be finished later this year and I can't wait to start working. Technical writing. If you have the ability to take complex technical information and simplify it according to the reading audience, you can make well over $100K annually. People ridicule English degrees until they find out how much can be earned as a technical writer. Mobile crane operator. Union guys pull over $200K and it's a trade that's pretty easy on the body. Operating engineers have a surprisingly high occurrence of back, neck and wrist injuries. They do make a ton of money though. I fix hospital beds, will be making $100K within my first 2 years with full benefits. I also have full control over my hours. Power linemen make bank. Not a lot of people even know about it. Utility lineman. There is a developing shortage nationwide due to baby boom retirements. It's well paid base, but the overtime is fabulous. I have a couple friends who got into this after they left the military. They all make well over $100K. Storm seasons bring in tons of overtime. They're all in their mid to late 20s buying houses. I drive machinery in a coal mine in Australia. I make about $170K. Even our new trainees are paid pretty well, about $48 per hour. I think it ends up being close to $90-100K. Easy money for sitting on your ass in an air-conditioned cab. $170K odd equals $118K. Longshoreman. If you are a senior member of a union you make absolute cake. $180K plus a year. Becoming a locksmith changed my life. Well paid and I get to help people out. I love it. Self-employed cleaning services. I don't know exactly what to call it. My parents started getting paid $35 an hour cleaning a community center to $50 from cleaning offices. My mom started it, then my dad joined in to help her with the hours and taking care of the house and kids. Eventually my mom got good contacts and started cleaning the offices of managers from factories, Sacramento politicians, and stuff alike. Can't express how proud I am of my mom. She turned all those crappy Hispanic cleaning lady jokes into something brag-worthy. My mom did the same thing, but she mainly works for very wealthy people living around us. Makes around $100 HR. Only works Tuesday, Thursday, and takes about 6-8 weeks of vacation yearly. UPS drivers can make close to $100K if you stay there long enough. Blew me away when I first heard that. My uncle was a UPS driver in Maine for 30 years. He had to quit due to an unrelated injury, but I'm pretty sure he was making high 80K low 90K before that. Ditch digger. Actually, directional boring. Guy I know was literally a ditch digger, but got into this by renting the specialized equipment just at the right time and right place. Fiber optic build out in the 1990s. He will also say that he made it simply by being reliable and trustworthy. I do not know exactly how much he makes, but he has an 80-foot sport fisherman. probably cost $7.10 million and he bought a $4 million property on a whim. TBH, if you actually show up to a job site as a contractor and do a decent job, you are better than 90% of them. I swear half the time they will take a job and only show up to work when they run out of beer money. And let's not even get into quality of the work. I was a bathroom attendant in a fancy restaurant, made hundreds of dollars a night in cash to do next to nothing. While they don't do nothing, their purpose seems to be to make the bathroom experience half as convenient and 1000% more awkward. And they always succeed. The year I got out of high school, I picked up a job at a private country club working the bag room. When I spotted a member, I'd grab their reserved private cart from the garage and load their clubs on it that they kept stored in the bag room. Couple damp towels hung on the back, pencils, scorecards and everything waiting by the time they stepped up. Place was primarily executives and whatnot for like the major automotive companies here in Michigan. I made a couple hundred each day in tips. During a couple tournaments that took place, I went home with around $500 in my pocket. I took home so much each day that I kept forgetting to pick up my paycheck, which was something like another $400 each week. Late 90s minimum wage. Only part of the job I hated was using the picker to get the balls off the range. There was always some ass bag trying to use me for target practice. Funeral director is a great paying job with not a whole lot of schooling. That's what I do and I make about $75,000. Janitor in the public sector. I approve of this comment. Doorman at a big name hotel. Tips 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 baby. If you have a strong stomach, cleaning up death and crime scenes pays very well and requires little education. I have a friend who did this. It definitely paid well, but he talked about some of the things he saw and I don't know if I could do it myself. There is a job in my country called chickenessaire. You're paid something like 10k euros per mission to touch newborn chicks and determine their gender. The ones near me must be really bad at their job because they seem to have a 50% success rate when we buy chicks. So we may as well leave it up to chance. In some states, corrections officers make insane money with just a get and willingness to work overtime. In CA, those guys can make $125k a year with a little overtime. Elevator technicians. Bartending. Some people know, but the overwhelming majority don't. If I only work 20 hours, 2 days a week this year, weekends, I would make close to $50k. If I really tried and worked 2 solid jobs 5 days a week, I would easily hit close to, if not over, $100k. This doesn't apply to every bar or bartender. You're not going to make this type of money at an Applebee's or a super franchised corporate establishment. So true. I have a good friend that bartends in this Spanish club in Miami, and he said if he decided to work 4 days a week instead of working 1-2 days a week, he could probably make $100k a year. YouTubers who just copy Reddit posts into a voice thing and then upload it with the text on the background. Hot dog vendors can earn 6 figures in a year. Collecting golf balls. Saw on the news a guy makes over $250,000 traveling around and using scuba gear getting golf balls. That's more scuba diving. If in Florida, that's very well worth it considering, as you Flaccoman 954 said, freaking gatters. Same with underwater welding. No one's paying you for the wielding part as much as they're paying you for the possibly that some tube sucks you in and you die. IDK, if surprising but one people don't think about. Selling ad space on local broadcast stations. I do it and make more than most families do in my area, and I'm at smaller market. Going into a medium one can put you well into 6 figures. I work as a lunch lady. I get school vacations off, summers off, and weekends. No nights, or even really afternoons. It's amazing. I also get benefits, and every year I get a raise. So between the money and the time off, the job is 100% worth it. You must be full-time. I'm part-time and don't get benefits. But you're right. Only work like 108 days a year and still get paycheck during the summer off. Furry P artist. Seriously. Furries will shovel out so much money for commissions and then tip on top of that. If you get a big enough following, it can be surprisingly well paid. Contractors for household moving companies with 18-wheelers can gross between $200 and $400k a year. Interesting to know how much is profit considering the running costs and insurance for an 18-wheeler, let alone the cost of an 18-wheeler. Train driver for London Underground. Heavily unionized industry, and London's dependency on the network means they've been able to demand an enviable package. High base pay, high overtime rates, and travel passes for the family. I think a lot of this thread is really misleading. First, everyone is saying, I knew a guy or I made 100k, and while I don't doubt that these are true things people are sharing, it isn't what someone else can expect to make. We should be talking about median salary or median wage. Second, especially since we aren't taking about median salaries, almost nobody included location. A few people did. Making $80k in Nick or San Fran is like making $30k in a small Midwestern town according to most cost of living salary comparison websites. The real truth is, a reasonably free market is going to adjust wages based on supply and demand, meaning that a job is either difficult to do because it takes lots of skill, training or education and pays well, like a heart surgeon, or a job is dirty, dangerous, or otherwise unpleasant and has to pay well to attract candidates, like certain fishermen, or a job whose wages are high due to external factors like a union or lobbying body that sets wages, which results in far more candidates than jobs, like my union painter uncle that makes $120k instead of the national median of $40k. Top comment is garbage collector in New York City. First $100k in Nick is the equivalent of $40k in a small Midwestern town, and that wage is artificially high, resulting in far more applicants than jobs. Meaning, odds are, you can't get that job. National median is $25k. Next top is aircraft dispatcher. National median salary is $32k according to Glassdoor and Salary.com, but $40k if you believe the Airline Dispatcher Federation. Finally, a lot of people are taking about starting a business doing X, which is entirely different than doing X. Median salary of a plumber is $45k in the US. They don't get the hourly wage they bill you for. And if they start their own plumbing business, they need to pay for insurance, benefits, additional taxes, advertising, and a million other things on top of just being a plumber. They also have to deal with all the hours when they don't have work. High risk, but higher potential reward. A successful business person running a plumbing company who has 10 employees might make $200k or more per year, but they might also lose $100k, and it doesn't really compare to a salary, especially today with all the salary information we have available to us. A job that pays a lot, that doesn't suck, that anyone can do, isn't going to keep paying a lot. Document specialist for utilities. Basically you have to know someone to get into it, but I went from making $40k as an office admin to $120k as a doc specialist. No college requirement. Often people just get their spouses or siblings on because they've worked in an office before. As a general rule, this is terrible for anyone who actually knows what they're doing in the job, but, like, whatever. A lot of times I'm just getting paid to hold down a desk. Optician. I get $30 plus an hour to sell you glasses and contacts. Trader Joe's managers. General managers of stores make $100,000 plus. Assistant store managers make $60,080,000/year. Not bad for working grocery. Scrum masters in software development industry. They are paid six figures for basically setting up meetings and being cheerleaders. They don't have any responsibility for delivery of work and they don't have any work beyond what I described. Update. I am talking about a dedicated Scrum Master who does absolutely nothing else but be a Scrum Master. Update 2. I agree with you when you say you hate that this position exists as an individual entity and do believe that having one person just do this is wasteful. Update 3. I am specifically referring to Scrum Masters. Project managers and engineering managers and POs are not included in this. I would be asking for six figures too if I had to deal with fricking Gira. San Francisco Poop Patrol. A 10-person team. All they do is go around the city and clean up human feces, which is apparently a problem there. They make about $80,000 a year, plus pensions and benefits, which bring the total to about $150,000. Not even kidding. Let's go scoop poop. But it's in San Francisco, one of the most expensive cities in the country. Dog groomer. It's a weird industry, though, and a skill that really has to be learned hands-on. Grooming schools can be a good start, but I know great groomers that never went to school for it, and terrible groomers that spend thousands on classes. Just being good at handling dogs is the best foundation for success. It's not the easiest job in the world. It's largely commission based, and you're lucky if you get any benefits out of it, but if you get enough practice and to be good at it and build up a loyal clientele base in a decently affluent area, it's good money. The haircuts I do range from $70 to $175, and I'm paid 50%, which averages out to around $30 to $35 an hour most days. Not everyone tips, but those that do usually tip $5 to $20 per dog, and because I do about 40 dogs in an average week, that's an extra couple hundred in my pocket. So if you don't mind working on your feet all day, sustaining repetitive motion injuries, not taking lunch breaks, dealing with insane customers, and picking crap off dog buttholes, it's a good living. Underwater welding pays a tremendous amount. The only one I know personally retired comfortably in his 40s. Given how dangerous underwater welding is, I'd say the pay isn't surprising at all. I'm a gardener. There's a serious lack of folks willing to do manual labor in the outdoors year-round. Most commercial properties have to maintain a certain amount of green area in our city. Hospitals and other places like that need legitimate crews to do the work with professionalism. No catcalling or spitting or swearing etc., including bonded employees and good insurance and equipment etc. As a result, we are in demand and we get paid surprisingly well. No university education needed, low barrier to entry, great pay and job security. Notary clerks. $30 for just signing a document and putting in register. Serious, Redditors that have gotten a fake degree, listed entirely fake accomplishments, or otherwise lied on a resume. How's that going for you? A friend's sister completely lied about a degree and experience working in the hotel industry. Every bit of all of her claims were entire fairy tale bulls. She got a job and within 2 years was the assistant manager of a very large, very nice hotel. They found out she lied about her degree and demoted her. She immediately went to the competition and got a job because she had experience. When I was younger, I lied my buns off to get my first real job. Embellished everything from my final GPA with my degree to the work experience I'd had previously. Lot of stretched truths or complete lies. But I was desperate. Had no money, nothing of value but an older car, and I had applied to 60 places the honest way and gotten 60 rejections. The job was hours and hours away in a different city, so I knew I would have to move for it, and I figured why not, no one was going to know me out there. I could get away with it. Probably. It was brutal. The keep calm and carry on slogan might as well have been my bread and butter. I was in way over my head for a few months, but I didn't let it stop me. I asked questions. I observed and learned everything I needed to learn, and I worked long hours without complaints. I was your typical yes man when the boss asked for something. Training, volunteering, shadowing the more experienced employees. I did it all. By the time I left that job, I had all of the skills I needed for the next one. I would never recommend lying for a high-level position, but I can say that by getting my foot in the door at the first job, I did set the foundation to build on for the next. I would not be where I am today if I hadn't. The college I went to was basically fake and mostly a scam. Think it tech. I finished all my courses and the required credits for a degree, but was told I needed to pay a remaining balance on my account of $2,500 to receive my diploma. I worked in the financial aid department as a work study and found someone's username password under their keyboard. Still works 4 years later. I had access to all student financial data. When I looked at my account and saw that over $5,000 of the charges were fee related, I said frick that and told them they would never see a dime from me. Never received my actual degree, but I put it on my resume. I have been a network engineer for 3 years. That piece of paper that I never actually got still cost me $29K. If I went as far as to log in, I would waive the fees for myself. Apart from a work permit application to work in a foreign country, I've never had to show my actual degree certificates to anyone. I think once you have a few years experience in work, people are less worried about that. On client calls, I'll sometimes imply that I understand what they are talking about when I don't in the moment. If when I know I have access to the resources to figure it out later. That is, a colleague who understands the subject better. My friend and I faked each other for references for years. We'd use our real names but fake positions. I'd get a call. Hey, if anyone should call you about me, you are the manager at Ziz and I did a great job and only left to go back to school or some bulls like that. I'd give him the same calls. We both got fired a lot. Funny thing is, no one ever called either one of us and we both got numerous jobs with our fake references. I read about this in the early 90s while I was in college. At the Caterpillar HQ in Peoria, Illinois, a woman applied for a management job claiming she had a degree in engineering and an MBA. Strangely, luckily, the department she managed improved for the first 2 years she managed it. Then it started to decline. HR got an anonymous tip that she had lied about her experience. It turns out she only had a BA in communications. I've always wondered how she could fake having an engineering degree. The year was 1993 and I needed a summer job while I was in college. I completely and totally lied when I was asked if I had computer experience and if I was proficient with WordPerfect. In my head I'm like, what's that? But aloud I was like, sure. When I got the job, office reception, I didn't know how to find the power switch on the computer. I taught myself a lot of software that summer, and I ended it by installing a database and populating it with about 700 student files. I also sent my first email. I parlayed that job into a temp secretary job when I graduated, which I was promoted out of into a full-time job in HR. And I was promoted twice after that before I quit to live in a van. No lie. So I guess I did okay. In my friend's circle in the 90s was this one guy. Let's call him Dave. Dave was annoying and kind of a brat in his early 20s working at Egghead Software as a plain old full-timer and cashier. I forgot why he hung out with us, but he did. Often the first to get trashed and drunken and gathering. The IT craze was starting, and some friends in the circle started to get IT jobs with huge salaries. Back then, it was kind of insane. Dave decided to hop on the bandwagon and be an IT guy, only he wasn't very smart or someone known for his planning skills. But he managed to snag a huge paying job as a senior networking technician. He knew nothing about networks. He was completely and utterly over his head. His resume was 110% lies. He claimed a CS degree and he never went to college. He had all the alphabet of certs. He claimed jobs he never had, never existed, and if you added up the experience, he must have got his degree when he was 10. We told him it was a bad idea. We cringed when he applied places, and gasped when he got a job paying $60K when that was a lot more money than it is now. Then we took bets when he'd be discovered and fired. It never happened. One of the first things he did was claim his certifications needed renewed, so they sent him to class and he eventually got certified. Now he had certs. The company got bought out, and he transferred there, got a huge bonus, and said he wanted to go back to school. They paid for 2 years of his tuition, I think, before he got laid off with a huge severance. He got a job making even more as a software architect, or some such nonsense. He got his degree, kept job hopping, and eventually, little over 6 years he didn't have to make up anything. We were furious, of course. Not only did he truly fake it until he made it, he was the worst type of person to succeed. Those that worked with him said he was insufferably smug, laughably incompetent, and shamelessly brown-nosing constantly. He made friends and played golf with C-levels, rubbed elbows with elected officials, and hung out with sports celebrities. He lived in a ridiculously expensive condo, drove custom-ordered Audis, and despite 2 DUIs, knew enough people to get off on technicalities, and boasted about it all. At some point around 1999, he vanished. Not like missing person vanished, but we just stopped hearing about him. I have heard all kinds of rumors, like he slept with some CEO's wife, burned out went hippie, or moved to the West Coast after killing a bunch of kids in a van while drunk driving. They sound like wishful thinking endings more than real, though. I can't Google him because his name is almost as common as John Smith. Laughably incompetent. This is all a matter of perspective. If the task is be a software engineer, then it might fit the bill, but not for Dave. For Dave the goal is quite different. Fake your way into a farcically large salary. In this, Dave is all but incompetent. In this Dave excels. I didn't have it on my resume, but at the job interview I mentioned I was interested in eventually learning SQL. I had only dabbled in Access, didn't really admit to knowing anything about databases. The company happened to depend on SQL for practically 97% of the business. Eventually, the two people, that managed all our databases left the company, so after only working in IT for 1Y1/2, I had just finished my associate's degree a week prior to the interview. They promoted me to junior DBA and I had zero training from predecessors. I ended up teaching myself enough SQL over a few months to carry my own weight, got to know the third-party support team pretty well, and learned the company's business from the ground up. I'm still working at the same place. Now I'm the main DBA and corporate application specialist for the entire company. Honestly, the way I went from stoner dropout kid to where I am now, stoner DBA guy, is still crazy to me. Things went so well I was expecting the sky to fall on my face every second. I lied about having a degree in an interview for a government contractor position, when in actuality I dropped out of college. Job I was applying for required a security clearance. I told the truth on the clearance paperwork. Nobody really brought up the discrepancy. That was 16 years ago and I still work in the same place. Out of college I was having some trouble getting work in my field without any professional experience. Software engineer. A compay contacted me saying that they had a program to train me then help place me in a job. I was a bit desperate at this point so I jumped at the guarantee of a job. They set me up in a 3-bedroom apartment with 5 other guys for a 10-week training program. The first few weeks weren't too bad. I was learning things that were never taught at school. At about the 5th week reality came down hard when they let us know that they were going to spruce up our resumes for us. The rest of the training would be them teaching us how to convincingly lie about the 4 years of experience they put on our resumes. We had to learn how to talk about companies and projects we were a part of, but none of them really existed. When we were good enough at it they started giving us job interviews. I did end up getting a job out of it and actually came clean to my boss about a year in, which was against my contract from the training place, but frick them. I worked there for another year and left for unrelated reasons and now work somewhere else. It was so sketchy and I hated it, but it did get me a job and I used that job as experience to get a new job. So I guess things are going okay. 4/10 would not recommend though. Do you know JavaScript? And to my surprise, every other tester said no. 4 years later, I now know JavaScript. And I'm technically the CTO, although it's like a 10-person company, so what the heck does that even mean? Other job is organist, and almost every church that's looking is desperate because they didn't realize how boring church is without music. I'm really grateful my 2 jobs are needs based, because I have absolutely no qualifications for either. I've seriously massaged one date on my CV to minimize a career break. Never got discovered, and now there is almost no chance it ever will. I also upgraded one of my old job titles, because it said coordinator, and I actually had line management responsibility. I wouldn't lie about qualifications, doing projects I'd never done etc. I couldn't lie about qualifications on moral grounds, and claiming skills you don't have is a good way to get fired. I've done that so much I can't remember what the actual dates were. This whole thread scares me. In a sea of liars, I'm about to hit the job market once again exiting the military, and I refuse to lie embellish my resume. It makes me happy to see people like you. Not because honesty is a great thing, but because I know that I have a better shot for every person that doesn't embellish. Due to an unexpected layoff, we had to move to my then wife's hometown in 1998. A friend there told me about a job in HR with a large offshore vessel company that he was sure I could get. This friend was an hour manager elsewhere and with his help, I embellished the heck out of my resume, played heavily on my past Navy experience, and studied a HR college textbook to memorize some HR related terms, processes and such. Landed the interview. They loved me and offered me the job the same day. 19 years later, I've been with 4 different offshore companies in various jobs, advancing my salary with each move, and I'm now in a nice 6-figure management position, all based on a bull's resume that would have never withstood serious scrutiny. Beelzebub's taint. That's really inspiring, and thanks for your service. I knew with a guy who worked IT at a major insurance company for years and never got caught. When he did, it was for something really random comment. He was a nice guy, just quiet and kept to himself. Apparently wasn't quiet enough, or didn't keep to himself enough. TLDR, lied about skills, had to learn them on the spot, ended up getting me crazy promotions. Nobody really knows the truth. Lied on my resume that I knew how to write in PHP, MySQL, etc. I knew the basics of PHP and programming, but never really worked with MySQL outside of setting up a basic DB. Had no idea how to actually work with it. I got asked by the president of the company to write a program, was completely lost, ended up learning on the spot, a lot of reading, trial and error, and about a week later I had something functioning. That framework then spiraled into a 7-year project of building a massive set of tools used extensively by about 40 people today and is now business critical. I'm entirely self-taught, and that one lie ended up forcing me to learn not only PHP, MySQL and so forth, but a heck of a lot of other things as a result as my knowledge grew and I began to integrate a lot of systems. Something I would have never thought I could do. I now make triple what I started at 7.5 years ago. When my sister and I were in middle school, my father had an accident at work and became permanently disabled. He ran $1 million company. My mother, the smartest person in the world, had worked her entire career as my father's business partner, mostly running payroll, handling the little stuff to keep it all going. So here she was, with a severely handicapped husband and 2 little girls with no college experience at all. It didn't take long to start drowning in debt. So, she got creative with her resume and landed a job for $15 an hour running a completely different type of business. Within 6 months, she asks for a raise to $25 and gets it. Today, she makes over $100,000 a year and is highly sought after. I feel that employers put way too much stock in the college educated. I didn't put a fake degree or anything like that, but I definitely lied on my resume. I made up fake titled positions at jobs I held, saying I was an office manager when I was literally the only person in whole office. Said I had experience using computer programs I hadn't ever used before. Said I was licensed in real estate, even though I hadn't ever even taken the exams for them. Took the classes, just never took the test to get licensed, etc. Yesterday was my 1-year anniversary and my bosses decided to officially promote me to manager, gave me a raise and then gave me approval to go ahead and hire a PT assistant to help me do my work. So I'd say things are going fairly well. Sometimes your best bet is to just fake it till you make it. I don't know if this quite counts, but due to financial reasons I wasn't able to complete my degree at the prestigious 4-year university I went to. I was 2 terms shy of finishing. I list it on my resume, but I only put the dates I attended and what my majors were. As for how it's working out for me, seems fine. I have a good administrative job at a large national company, and when I say I went to my school they sort of just assume I finished. Actually did the same. Nobody has ever questioned it. Came ever so close to graduating high school, within months, but never did. Attended a top 10 school for undergrad and I'm finishing up my PhD. Hey, I work for a company that checks things like education and gets references to check certification, etc. Don't lie about this crap. Compared to conducting other background checks, verifying education is freaking easy. 30 seconds and I can tell that no, you didn't graduate, or you're listing a master's when you have an associate's, and so on. By far, the most common lie I catch people in is about their education. I know a person who used her sister's college degree on her resume to get a job, worked up the rungs and now is a CEO of the branch. She's quite successful and has a taste for expensive food and alcohol. She made it out fine and nobody other than her family will know. And all of us. I went to my college graduation in 2004. Even though I found out right before graduation I was missing 1 credit, there was a required course that most people take their first semester, about how to write letters and format resumes and whatever. High school stuff. I never took that class and didn't want to pay hundreds in tuition for it, but it sounded like I could petition for an upper division writing class I took to count for it, since that class was actually in my major. I got the letter from my professor, which was a huge hassle. Filled out a bunch of paperwork and took it to student services, and the guy helping me was such a dong bag for some reason. A couple months went by and I didn't hear anything, so I went back to student services and they had no record of my petition. I was like, a frick it. So now I say I have a BA, but technically I don't. No one has ever checked, but sometimes if I'm applying for a job and I think they will check, I change my resume to say pursuing a BA at the University of blah blah, and I have a sob story ready. That's mostly true for why I never finished my degree. Universities suck for that. A friend of mine moved around between 3 or 4 schools, and the last one had a required history of Texas class, because yay Texas, that he had to waste an extra semester to take just so he could get the piece of paper from them saying Bachelor of whatever. It's working brilliantly. I've been teaching in China for 7 years now and have a higher salary than most of my expat peers here. In the early 2000s, I just graduated community college with a degree in economics with a very low GPA because I sucked at math. I tried applying to banks, mom and pop shops, fast food restaurants, and all of them rejected me. I got desperate, so I put in the name of the state college nearby, put a higher GPA on my resume, rented a suit, took my dad's briefcase out to the city and started going door to door to see if they were hiring. A few of them gave me dirty looks. Most told me to come back next week, but the small credit union asked to see my resume. I gave it to them. They asked me a few questions about my degree and they scheduled me for an interview on the spot. While I was sitting in the waiting room, I picked up a newspaper and turned to the finance section. I memorized most of the information there, and when it was time for the interview, they asked me about the story I just read and I told them everything I just read. The guy seemed to be impressed and I got the job. I moved to a major bank a few years later on with the experience I'd gained. I made a lot of money in banking leading up to the financial crisis of '08, but I had saved up a lot of money by then, so I bought a few foreclosed houses and supplemented my savings off rent. Whoa, this sounds like a plot to a movie. My brother had been unemployed for several months and was finally able to get an interview for a job abroad. The interview was going great until the employer ended by standing up, going, "Oh, and you have a driver's license, right?" Of course, my brother lied. A few days later he was informed that he got the job. He found out that driving customers around was a big part of the job, so he decides to spend the coming 4 weeks, before he would have to move to this country, getting the license. He literally got it the day before he moved. I've never done this, but I don't see how it can be that bad once you get past the point of being hired. Supposedly you got hired in preference of at least a few people who got interviewed with a legitimate resume, but they picked you, so you had to do somewhat good on an interview and have actual skills required for the job. Occasionally they might try to verify accomplishments after being hired, but once you're hired, how does it even come up again after that? After reading some of this thread now, I think faking part of your resume might be required for some jobs as long as it's not too obvious, just to get ahead of the competition who might have done it too. I am a faculty member of a university and we have a job posting out for a new chair of the department. We got an application that, it turns out after some simple googling, was completely plagiarized, top to bottom, right down to the authorship of journal articles, which one of my colleagues recognized as papers he'd cited in his doctoral dissertation, but had never heard of the person whose application they were attached to. The person himself was real, has a real faculty position at another institution, and has tenure there, but the entire application was stolen from blog posts and other academics. Needless to say, we did not offer him the position. Late to the show and not me, but a great uncle. He got a job on a highway construction crew with the blasting crew due to his experience. His experience came from the year before when he and my grandfather stole a box of blasting caps and blew them up. This would have been in the early to mid 1940s. Can you imagine the crap show if you did that today? Sir, you are encouraging domestic terrorism. I almost got in trouble with a previous employer because they thought I'd claimed a degree, when I never mentioned I had one. I mentioned that I went to university for 2 years, but never said what for or listed a degree among my qualifications. It came up in social conversation when I'd been in the position for 18 months and ended up in a minor internal investigation when HR heard about it. Luckily, as the job didn't require a degree, and I had never claimed to have one, they didn't do anything. I told a potential employer I was a physically disabled black woman once. Apparently that was enough to jump me to the front of the pile. Diversity unicorn right there. Boy were they surprised when an able-bodied white man showed up to the interview. Actually got the job, too. Apparently it would have been hiring based on race and gender if they didn't, and that's illegal in Canada. Diversity hiring is racism at its finest. Worked as an anesthesiology assistant. Had no experience in that field, but I did previously volunteer at a local dog shelter where we used to put them down. I took a semester off between graduating undergrad and starting grad school cause the husband and I were moving cross country and that just seemed like a whole lot of extra stress that I didn't need to deal with at one time. When we got there, I started looking for a job that I would work for 6 months full time and that would let me do part time afterwards once school started up. That way I could earn a little extra money but not have to work full time and do grad school. So basically retail. I noticed that every place I put my bachelor's degree down didn't call me back, but the one place where I accidentally left it off called me back. So I realized that most of the places I was applying to saw me as overqualified and would bail as soon as I found a real job. So I started listing that I was a junior attending the college in town and tailoring the interviews to imply that I was looking for a flexible, part-time gig for just some extra money. Suddenly a million callbacks. I ended up working at a convenience store for 8 months. Worked out great cause my grad program was online. The job had me working nights, and I had a lot of time to read and do homework. Worked in the oil and gas industry and saw loads of guys arrive not having a clue what they were doing and definitely not being qualified for the jobs they were doing. Those were such big jobs that they were able to get away with doing a terrible job and finishing with having 3-4 years of experience on great pay. Success for them, I guess. I worked at a corporate grooming salon. They hired a girl in as a bather and she lasted maybe 2 weeks before being fired for excessively calling off. She later got a job at a mom and pop grooming salon. I went to the gym with a couple of times after her being fired and she told me they were going to teach to groom. Fast forward a couple of months and I ended up quitting and got a job at the same mom and pop shop. She no longer worked there, but the owner was like, "Oh, you're so and so's friend." I no longer talked to her because she moved over an hour away, but told the owner yes, I knew her. We talked some about it and she was very nicely trying to explain how the girl wasn't a very good groomer and asked me about training at my old store. After a bit of us talking, I was pretty much responded with, "Wait, what?" She only worked as a bather for like 2 weeks. She didn't even finish training. Which was hilarious to me because apparently the girl told the owner she had been grooming for several months and just wasn't comfortable with scissors. She was straight up grooming dogs and sending them home super jacked up until the owner intervened and offered to retrain her. She ended up leaving shortly after that and started her own grooming business. But as far I can tell, it's just her FB page and she's gone to a couple of people's house and done nails and baths. The couple of dogs she has shaved look worse in the after pics. I knew how to do like 2 things in AutoCAD, so I listed it with software I knew. Naturally I was hired for an AutoCAD project and got to learn it in a week. Worked out fine. Lied my butt off to get an interview for a desk job I knew nothing about. Was given a practical to prove I knew what I was doing. It was Excel, which I never touched, and a few pages to fill out. I googled it as I went, passed, and learned Excel on my own in under a month. Easiest job I ever had. 6:30 to 3 o'clock Monday, Friday. I was done my work by 9 AM and literally walked around with a clipboard the rest of the day. What is a job that someone could easily walk into, pretend like they know what they are doing, and fool everyone into believing they are an actual employee? Back when I worked at McDonald's, after my shifts were over I liked to go to the rallies across the street. One day I was walking through the store with a basket of groceries when an old lady stopped me and asked me where the cooking oil was. I thought nothing of it and said, "I'm not totally sure, but I think it might be that way," and pointed to the left. She got all shocked and offended, and she said, "You think?" and I nodded. "You mean you don't even know?" I was confused, so I said, "Well, I mean, you don't know either." She was about to respond when she looked down and saw the McDonald's logo on my shirt and said, "Oh, you don't work here. Sorry," and she scampered off. I had a pretty good laugh about it. I was confused, so I said, "Well, I mean, you don't know either." Absent-minded shrug. Personal trainer, fitness instructor. If you are well put together, you'll be amazed how much bulls you can sling and get away with it. Your calf muscles are not bulking up very quickly. You should kick this medicine ball around for a while. One time I was visiting the Museum of Modern Art in Manhattan with a large, multilingual tourist group. I ended up in the lobby holding maps in various languages and collecting the translating headphones as members of my tour group finished walking through the museum. As I was wearing a suit and holding various items, other museum visitors assumed I was a museum employee there to assist visitors. As people came up to me with questions, I decided to just help them instead of sending them away. At first I didn't realize what was happening, but eventually I started to have fun with it. "Mom, the Jackson Pollock display is on the 4th floor. Thank you for visiting MoMA," etc. It was all fun and games for a while. Eventually a gentleman wearing an orange reflective vest and a hard hat came up to me. He asked if it was okay for him and his crew to take a 15-minute break. Apparently, there were contractors doing some work at the museum. I told him to take 20 minutes. That last part made me smile. Okay, so here is what you do. You walk into any office in the US. In a short sleeve shirt with a collar, some nice pants and decent shoes. You go to a moderately busy looking office, find someone that looks like middle management and tell them you are here to look at a computer that was having network connectivity and printer issues. 90% chance someone in the office has something that is moderately like that. You then get taken to that person's desk. Now here is where it can get a bit tricky, as the person may not want to leave your side, but you need to tell them this could take a bit, so they should probably go get some coffee or take an early lunch. Once they are gone, you take their computer and monitors and GTFO. Holy crap, this thread reminded me of one of the most farcical things ever to happen in my life. A few years ago, before the internet was big, a family friend met and fell in love with a Portuguese girl who, it turns out, was a princess and heir to the throne. Spoiler, she wasn't. I'm also unsure if she was Portuguese or not, so just play along. Full stop. For some reason, said family friend, let's call him James, didn't bother checking this out. James is also a fairly wealthy guy and Princess made up basically leeched off him, without him questioning why she was never able to pay for anything. Occasionally, however, she needed to do something to keep up the pretense that she was a princess, so she would invite him on state visits, where there were never any photographers, but he didn't question this. Once she took him to a piece of land that was having a hotel built on it. She told him it was a new palace for her family. The builders began talking to her in Portuguese. I imagine words to the effect of "get off our building site," but obviously he couldn't understand. When they got engaged, she had flowers delivered from heads of state the world over. Only it turns out she had ordered them all on his credit card and from the florist down the road. But my absolute favorite moment of this story was when Princess Maid-up took James to see ill patients from her homeland. She walked into a hospital and took a white jacket off the stand and proceeded to tell doctors she was here to visit the infirm, and then paraded James round the hospital, talking to patients and checking their notes. Did I mention she told him she was a qualified doctor? The penny finally dropped about a year into it. But holy crap, it was funny, because everyone apart from James could see what was going on, and despite people telling him she wasn't a princess, he was adamant she was. TLDR. Family friend thought he was engaged to a princess. She was crap at covering it up, but surprisingly he fell for it. Well, if he wants to recover some of his losses, my cousin is a Nigerian prince. We're having a little trouble getting some funds stateside. Maybe he could help. I was wearing a light blue shirt and a navy tie at Macy's and a lady stopped me to get shoes in her size. I freaked out and pretended to quit right in front of her. All things taken into account that could be friggin' hilarious to do. Show up in something resembling a store's outfit, and in front of a bunch of customers you walk to another employee, start tearing them a new one for how horrible the job is and how they mistreat you, and then you just yell I quit and walk out the store, leaving people wondering and the employee confused. As long as you have a clipboard with paper, a pen, and walk with purpose, people will believe whatever you want. It always helps to flip through a few sheets of the paper as if you're double checking something while you walk by someone. Walk into Best Buy with a blue polo and car keys. It can't be that hard to relay vague information about some tech product. I had a royal blue button down embroidered with my company logo on it. Needed something pronto during an on-site visit. I had 2 employees ask me if I was a manager and a customer get mad at me. I walked into Fry's once and this dude was just being an absolute dong because I wouldn't tell him about the printers. Didn't click that he thought I was an employee. Oh man. So I had a friend who, on more than one occasion, at different locations obviously, would go into a chain sit-down restaurant such as an Outback Steakhouse on a busy Saturday night, wearing nice slacks, a warm pastel shirt, nice shows, etc. Walk up to the host stand and take a bunch of manager business cards. Then, he would go around the restaurant and ask people how their meal was going. Anyone who had even something slightly wrong with their meal, like oh, we love it now, we're so hungry though since you guys were on a wait, he would say something like I'm so sorry for your troubles. Tell you what, why don't you come back sometime and enjoy a nice dinner on me? Then he'd write like free dinner for 2 or something on the business card and scribble the real manager's initials. He'd do this for a few tables around the restaurant, then peace the frick out before anyone knew what happened. That whole let me get you something free using my business card as a coupon thing is universal enough in the restaurant world that even if they didn't do such things at this location, the managers were now in the awkward position when that guest returned to either give them free food or debate with the guest and tell them that this wasn't their card handwriting, etc. Robin Food. Museum gallery aid. Literally anyone can walk in, put on the uniform shirt or dress professional, stand in the corner of the gallery and tell people not to take photos with flash, no food, no water and no loud noises. And the occasional no, you can't sit on that bench, that one is art. I worked at Swarovski, the crystal store, and I was honestly a little disappointed when I discovered my coworkers didn't extensively research the process by which lead crystal is made prior to working there. So if you know 7 or 8 words for sparkly, you could probably work there too. Brilliant, incandescent, shimmering, shining, luminescent, reflective, refractive, scintillating, starry. That's all I have off the top of my head, and some probably don't fit too well. Wear a high-vis jacket or vest, safety boots and slightly worn hard hat and you can wander onto 80% of all construction sites unchallenged. United States Congressman. Sit down on either side of the room and talk to the guys around you. When there's a vote, vote just like all of them do. I work at a call center and we follow what are called scripts for our calls. If you could log into one of our computers, pop on a headset, and read the script, then you are set. No one would be any the wiser. Except at the end of the week when you haven't committed suicide or quit, they would know you aren't actually a call center employee. My friend told me a story last night of this guy who lied to an oil company about his experience on a certain type of rig. He kept a notebook with notes from the internet and advice from other friends on how to operate the machine. The first day the dude walked on the rig, they treated him like a seasoned vet. An airline pilot, Thomas Sum, a maintenance engineer who became a Boeing 737 pilot by flying a few nights in a flight simulator and printing a fake airliner pilot license. Amazingly enough, he flew passengers for 13 years without any incidents. I once went to a store not realizing that I was basically wearing the same thing the employees wear. People came up and asked me questions the entire time I was there, and since it was a store I knew very well, I answered. My mom used to work in a deli at a supermarket, and a couple guys came up to the customer service desk, where they also sell cigarettes, and holding their ladder, claimed that they were performing a routine inspection of the sprinkler system in the ceiling. In true super spy fashion, they crawled through the ceiling and proceeded to rob Safeway of thousands of dollars of cigarettes from the room behind customer service and just Walked out, unquestioned, with nothing but a duffel bag full of cigarettes and a massive ladder in hand. I wouldn't call this easily done by anyone, but it took major balls and I'm very proud. I have a family member who is a contractor providing services to our military. Those services, which I won't detail here, require that he have and maintain a clean room in order to clean parts and equipment he is providing to fulfill contracts. Picture a bunny suit and all, with many steps required to clean and hermetically seal parts going onto military craft. He has one major competitor. My family member began losing bid after bid to this competitor, who kept coming in with the low bid for the contract. My family member knew this company didn't have a clean room, or access to one nearby, which went out of business, and it was impossible to bid solo if those clean room services were included. Clearly, it wasn't fulfilling the clean room requirement portion of the contract, and that's why it could bid so low. Just lied about it and zeroed out the cost. My family member filed formal complaints, but it went nowhere, not even a reply that any inspection or follow-up had been taken. My family member got fed up, made a script, called the competitor, and made an appointment for a plant inspection, and particularly tour of the clean room to take photographic evidence of the facilities in response to complaints rendered during the bidding process. The contracts they were working on were really sensitive, and if it were not bad enough they were lying to get the low bid. They were endangering our enlisted men and women by not properly preparing the parts and equipment they needed in the field. This crap matters. So, he called, made the appointment, and the competitor scrambled a few times to postpone, and finally said, "We've had a systems failure and we just had to close the clean room." My family member said, "That's unfortunate, but you are prohibited from bidding on any contract requiring a clean room, yada 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 yada. I won't write you up, but you need to act fast." I'm paraphrasing, but you get the idea. They withdrew all those bids, and they came to my family member, as they should have in the first place. They have never replaced the clean room they never had, and they don't bid on the same projects anymore. Just means they are lying elsewhere. 2. Probably, my family member was dishonest about his identity, but he was just so furious he was bidding honestly and completely and losing to scumbags who were not. Problem solved. For now. Anyway. I was at a bar once and bet the hostess at the door that I could get someone to show me their ID. Mind you, this is right after they get carded outside the door. The hostess is for anyone who wants to get a private table or whatever. So I tell her to step out from behind her podium and I take her place. First attempt is a complete failure as I still have my beer on the podium. Though it was a couple and I had the girl hooked, but her boyfriend called BS. They laughed and walked past me. Second attempt, I stashed the beer under the podium and noticed a phone as I set it down. Then it dawned on me, the phone would be what I needed. 2 guys walk in and I have the phone held button side down and tell them I need to see their IDs. I get a confused look from both and quickly explain that I have to scan their IDs. I get each ID one at a time and hold the phone over the IDs going back and forth, scanning, while shining the light from the phone screen into the ID. Both get their IDs back and I inform them that they are good to go. Retail. When I worked in that sector I would just read the packaging back to the customer, slightly changed, and they were always really happy for my help. I once walked into a restaurant after it was closed and sat at a meeting to discuss how they could improve their poor business. They never suspected me being not part of them. I gave suggestions on how to improve their service even though I've never ate there before. I was chucked out an hour later after they realized I wasn't a waiter of theirs. Wear some $20 40 slacks, a $20 shirt, a $8 tie, and some $80 shoes, $2 clipboard, $14 Walmart special briefcase. Walk into the back end of any retail store, straight to the inventory computer. You won't get a question. If you do, ask their name. Say you're Connolly's boss, district merchandising manager. They will panic. They weren't told district would be in today. Crap, the break room is a huge mess. He's gonna go to the break room. Frick, now he wants my name. Just disappear. Disappear into the gears of this hardly oiled retail machine. And don't be around him the rest of the day. Ask why the insert merchandising promotional cardboard crap isn't more organized and ready go to for the launch. That'll give you about 30 minutes 1 hour of time without a single question being asked of you. Then, You grab the promotional Blu-rays, and you're now a hero to the pirates. I work loss prevention at Target. We just had an incident where a guest put on red and khaki walk to the electronics department and say he needed to bring a camera, the ones we lock up, to guest service. He then tried to walk out with it. My cousin would put on a blue polo shirt and khakis and pretend to work at our local aquarium. He would go to where people lined up for tours and take people on tours and read off the information from the plaques on the wall. He got on the email list and eventually scheduled an interview and got hired. A super Walmart, not a regular Walmart, but not as a Walmart employee, and preferably at night. I was hired for some contract based on my technical skills to do what amounted to delivery and installation. I was given 2 embroidered polos and an ID badge. Let me tell you, the combination of those 2 items is like an invisibility cloak. I would walk in and ask for the manager, then tell him that I was going to take his point of sale units and replace them with new ones. The answer was almost always okay, just let us know before you work on the cigarette aisle. No paperwork, no verification with management, and this with most of them having zero warning that we were coming. We'd just load them into shopping carts and carry them to the back to put on pallets. We'd use their pallets and their plastic wrap to do it. Only a couple of times did anyone have any interest in what we were doing with them, i.e., that we weren't just taking the old ones to a truck without bringing the new ones in. It is worth noting that the vast majority of equipment that we replaced was the exact same model as its replacement and in perfect working condition. It was just time to be replaced according to the lease, to be put beside all of the consistently broken equipment for which we didn't have replacements. Everyone just assumes you are supposed to be there. I was almost never stopped and asked who I was. The exceptions were almost always when I tried to use the fax machine in the personnel office, when I forgot my badge, or when we worked long enough for the day shift manager to show up, because for whatever reason, night shift managers are almost all chill and day shift managers are almost all uptight busybodies. This does not work at a classic style Walmart. The managers there have a tight leash on everything that happens in their store, and nothing will happen without T's being crossed and I's being dotted. Way back in the day I worked at Myers. It's like a much better Walmart. I was never introduced to a boss, never told what my job was. My schedule was printed out on a wall, so I came in, clocked in and walked around. Bag some groceries, go sit in the break room and read, walk around some more. I started clocking and then leaving. Come back 8 hours later and clocking out, so someone could work in a retail giant. Almost 2 years ago, I took a job in the PC department at Best Buy. It wasn't what I wanted. I was looking for IT work, but it was the only thing available, so I took it while continuing to look for work. On the first day of my hiring, literally just me with a few other new people watching HR videos in the back, a manager busts in the rooms, throws us all blue polos and tells us that 3 people called in sick and we have to work the floor. No training whatsoever, no access to registers or any knowledge whatsoever was stocking of the warehouse, barely even a handle on the layout of the store. By the time I got to lunch break, every ex-employee in the PC department was directing customers to me because I could actually answer their PC networking questions and not just vaguely wave my hands in the direction of $85 monster cables. So yeah, if you know anything about computers, you could easily pass for a Best Buy employee, and the people who actually work there will probably thank you for helping them out. Paramedic in a small town. The majority of my time is watching TV and cooking. Occasionally I have to drive a mostly healthy person to hospital. Backstage caterer at a concert. Me and some friends just flashed our college IDs. It was at the university's campus arena. To security, grabbed some aprons and a cart of food, fruit bowl, pasta, etc. and just wandered around backstage. Got some food, chatted up the backup singers, and snagged a couple bottles of booze. Only problem, the concert was Michael Bolton. Nice enough guy, but still, Michael Bolton. Plumber. Apparently, a few months back, a guy walked into our office and asked one of my co-workers where the water main was. The co-worker showed him, then went back to his desk and continued working. The guy shut off the water and left. A little while later, another co-worker asked why the water wasn't working. Oh, some guy came in and shut it off. Who was he with? I don't know. Did you get his name? What did he look like? I don't remember. They called the water company, and apparently this guy had been going down the road pulling this stunt all day, so they were in the area and turned the water back on right away, but were annoyed that nobody had any info on who this guy was or why he was doing it. When I was down in Memphis at the Gibson factory, I was talking to my parents about one of the SGs on display. I guess some other customer heard me talking and then they started asking me questions about other guitars. I liked showing them around the store and I kept it up for about 15 minutes, but eventually had to tell them I wasn't an actual employee when my parents said we had to leave. So to answer your question, I guess anything in retail is pretty easy to fake. I actually did this once. There was a construction site near my college. I got bored one day and tried to see what I could do. I put on an oversized flannel type sweater shirt, hard hat from my landscaping job, clipboard and paper, and just walked around for like 10 minutes writing stuff down. It seems kinda lame now, but it felt really awesome. Old thread is old, so this is probably gonna get buried, but a friend of mine dressed business casual with a clipboard and some forms and brought along 2 of his friends in worker attire. They proceeded to walk straight into our university administration office, find a decent looking couch, check the forms, agree that it was the right couch and proceed to haul it away. No one questioned them, asked questions or anything. They had the couch in their dorm for a while before they set it up in random locations on campus for passing students to sit on before it finally got confiscated by campus grounds after maybe like 2 weeks. A long time ago, I accidentally, fashion fail, wore a red polo and khakis into a Target. I was hanging around the electronics area when a manager yelled at me to get back to work. I kindly told her no, and then she started barking at me about my missing name tag. Things got weird quick when I told her I didn't work there. Upper management in a moderately large company just use a lot of buzzwords, put on a very fake smile, and do everything you can think of to obstruct productivity and destroy employee morale. CEO, just be white, male, and tall, dress the part, and no one would ever guess you weren't qualified until the company folds, and then you would be given another CEO job because you have experience. Except for the fact that I've met at average height black and female CEOs. This is actually true. Filing for incorporation is easy. Funny story. A guy bluffed his way into my uncle's school as a teacher. He forged his certificates and completely nailed the interview. No one in the school administration caught onto it until the kids' grades started plummeting. I had a job where I explained to people how to install those Visa card machines for their business, which is ridiculously easy BTW. You plug them in and they basically install themselves. Enter a code, a little walkthrough on how to use it. Bada bing. Done. People actually thought I was some kind of genius because everyone got their machine working when they called me and lauded over how great I was. I'm just good at explaining things, that's all. Never had a busy day. Out of 8 hours I spent half an hour working, at the most. Spent the rest of the day fricking around on the internet. For the heck of it I wrote Harry Potter erotic fanfiction, and had 40,000 followers. I never had 40,000 people pay attention to a dang thing in my life. I am a pizza driver. I also work at an auto parts store. I had to deliver to a competitor of my parts store. The clerk who had ordered the food was struggling finding what his customer needed. I listened to what was being said before he paid me. After we were done I said his customer needed a particular part number. IT guy, since all you need to know is how to Google, and everyone thinks you are a genius, oh, and install a DB reader. Don't forget about Ultron. I heard that NASA uses it. People who actually like their jobs. What do you do? I'm an environmental geologist. I like uncovering the history of a property, and working outdoors is enjoyable when the weather is nice. I don't love every aspect. Of course, paperwork can be tedious. Often the weather is bad, and telling clients bad news is intimidating. But it's satisfying when the pieces of a problem fall together. I'm a flight attendant. Absolutely love my job. Thinking about going to flight school to be a pilot though, but nothing beats getting paid to travel the world. Go get your pilot license, there is no better time to. That's what I have been doing over the pandemic and it's been super fun. I am a loader for a distribution warehouse as my 40-hour job. I like it, but I keep it for the money and health insurance. But my second job, I am the regional director for a non-for-profit that helps guys with transitional housing when they get out of prison. We also help homeless guys on occasion and people who just need a hand up. That is my real passion. I lived in a house like this whilst sobering up. I was one of the only dudes there not on paper. I just wanted to say that even though it's thankless work, you do make a difference to those that are wanting a change. I made it out. I've been sober for 3.5 years and have a beautiful little family. Cheers to you and all you do for the fellas. Receptionist at a very small company where I also fill in when other departments are short-handed. Everyone is nice, with very few exceptions, and no one cares if I have an AirPod in and Netflix playing as long as crap gets done. For the railroad as a signalman, I work at a small station, so I am alone all shift, can browse Reddit, don't need to deal with office drama, and if no train is on my section of the line I can watch Netflix. I work at a museum and do data cleanup for our collections database, and I'm also getting us ready for a digital assets management system. So I do a lot of tedious cleaning in our database, correcting typos, deleting erroneous information, fact checking, etc. And eventually I'll split my time between that and cleaning up actual files, checking metadata, running checksums, deleting duplicates, etc. It sounds boring, and kind of is, but if you're the kind of meticulous type A person who loves organizing and making things tidy, and you also like falling down research rabbit holes, it can be entertaining and pretty satisfying. Not a lot of museums have a dedicated typo corrector on staff, so my job is pretty unheard of, but people who work in museums that hear what I do are always so amazed that my institution has someone like me fixing everything, albeit slowly. There's a lot of errors. It's pretty universal that museums all have messy butt data and no one with time to fix anything. Make wood for construction site. Only have to work roughly 16 days a month and make more than I ever did as an electrician, and without any of the stress. 4 on, 4 off swings should really be the norm for work-life balance, and I'm unsure if I'll ever be able to go back to working Monday to Friday. I'm an accountant. Grew up as the artsy type that everyone thought would be a traveling musician or music teacher. I thought I hated math and that I was bad at it growing up. Turns out I had untreated ADHD. I took a job as a teller in my early 20s and realized I really loved balancing things. Got my degree, and now I enjoy a job where every day I'm problem solving and investigating. Everything is a puzzle, and I love it. Accounting is way more than numbers and balancing. I'm so happy in my job. I work in industry. I did not like public accounting. I feel accounting rules, but frick public. I was a phlebotomist at a blood bank. People came in to donate blood voluntarily, so I never had to hold any nervous kid down to take their blood, and you're literally saving lives. Library clerk basically means I'm at the front desk all day every day, answering every question under the sun, watching how the joy lights up a person's face when I unite them with a book they want to read, helping people in dark times, and being around a bunch of other people who do the same thing and love it, too. I'd absolutely love to be a librarian when I grow up. I'm a student right now and I work 2 days a week shelving books at my local library. I love shelving, which sounds silly but it's fun. I love reading, but more so just helping people find what they need, and I hope someday I can work as a librarian. Helping adults obtain their high school equivalency and learn computer customer service skills. It's very rewarding helping those students who didn't finish high school because of personal family matters or undiagnosed learning disabilities. On the other end of the spectrum, it is very humbling teaching students more educated than me, for example, graduate degrees from their home country. I work on highways, like building bridges, making barriers, pouring cement for the road itself, etc. I honestly couldn't imagine myself staying in a job where I sit in front of a computer just typing away, cause it just bores me. I already went to school and didn't enjoy that kind of stuff at all. Building roads sounds satisfying. I recently started working as a late night laboratory technician, mixing chemicals and crunching numbers. I get paid to make liquids change colors and watch Hulu. Believe it or not, I'm answering this question and I'm an accountant. I have always loved spreadsheets, and now I get to play with them all day. I love making things make sense. So when a purchase order matches with an invoice and I can file the receipt and remittance, all squared away, it makes me happy. But my true passion is helping people. I am an accounts payable at a disability support provider. I don't speak to clients anymore, but I know that every invoice I pay, every service that is paid for accurately, is something that has helped someone live a better life. Someone on here once said I'm helping the world, one spreadsheet at a time, and I love that. Along with my spouse and my cats, I am living my dream. Surprisingly, I hear that from accountants a lot. My grandfather was an accountant and he used to say the exact same thing. He almost thought of it as a puzzle that he got to solve every day. I'm a dog groomer. Yeah, I get bit, scratched, pooped on, peed on, thrown up on, soaked with water, covered in dog hair that gets inside my skin, eyes, nose and mouth. But I get to make puppies pretty, and all dogs are puppies. The only times I've cried during my job was cause a request dog died or the dog was fighting me so much because it was in pain from skin tight mats. It's hard to see that kind of neglect and abuse from man's best friend. Custodian. There's something nice about cleaning an almost empty school listening to podcasts or music. Plus we occasionally get free pizza from events. Not current, but I used to be a camp counselor each summer. Did it for several years. Ran around playing sports, swimming, watching Pixar movies and eating snacks with a bunch of goofy kids. Half my co-workers were hot college girls. The pay was basically nothing, but at the time I was an assistant teacher at a public school, so terrible pay was all I knew. It was the happiest place I've ever been to and I miss it daily. Nice. That's exactly what I do. Well, I'm an assistant teacher at a public school and then have my summer camp gig. It's so much fun, but yeah, the pay for both my jobs sucks. Make like $35k a year. HR temp. People write in and ask me about their benefits or about stressful situations they're in, and I write back and answer their questions, connect them to someone who can help guide them through their stuff. I genuinely feel helpful and I like that. Emergency medical technician. I have good days and bad days. Management, hospital staff, patients, and co-workers can be butt sometimes. The pay is butt too, but the job itself? It's pretty sweet. Working feels like a road trip. No day is ever the same. Beats being stuck in a cubicle or having to please customers. Medical device engineer. I work in research and development, mostly on finalizing designs for new products coming to market. I don't touch manufacturing because that's stressful. I mean, R&D can be stressful too, but mostly it's not. Projects take a while. But medical engineers are a tad more social and fun than the traditional engineers I knew when I worked designing test frames for circuit breakers. Thing is, it requires an engineering degree, and those are hard to get. I'm not a huge fan of the pay, but I work for a non-profit organization that houses women straight out of incarceration for 6-12 months, helping them get back on their feet, building a relationship with them, joking with them, watching them grow, is the most fulfilling thing I have ever done. I love my job so much. That sounds incredible. Thank you for the work you do. I'm a high school English teacher and I love what I do. I love literature and poetry. Being able to share my love of that with students is amazing. When I can make a student like Shakespeare, I feel like I've won the lottery. As well, I love getting to know my students. I love being able to learn about their interests, their passions, and what excites them. I have a small group of boys who like to hang out in my classroom before school. They tell me about their hobbies, cars, video games, hunting, tell me jokes, and just act like themselves. I wouldn't trade that for anything. It's my favorite time of day. They are lucky to have you. I absolutely love every day I work as an EMT. A majority of the people you work with are inspired and driven to make the worst day in someone's life better. It's active enough to keep you from feeling stagnant. You get to sleep or generally just mess around with your crewmates when you don't have any calls or duties. You get plenty of fresh air and get to do a ton of cool crap. Ride helicopters, drive an ambulance, meet celebrities in many cases, etc. Microhumans feel like a second family and we make our station a second home with BBQs, potlucks, celebrations, playing video games during downtime, competitions, you name it. It's a beautiful job if you can look past the abysmal pay considering the things you're expected to do. Mechanical engineering in research and development. I'm one of the rare engineers who actually gets to see parts from the cradle to the grave. I take parts from concept, 3D model them, perform all kinds of dimensional and stress analysis for them and their assemblies, create drawings, get bids for their manufacture, oversee the contract to get them made, get them in and verify they meet our specifications, test them, get them to the field, and monitor and update their designs based on their performance. I've done all parts of that process at one time or another for different projects. I made it a point to make lateral moves to be really well-rounded, so even if I'm not indispensable, I always provide something, which lets me push to do the parts of the process I enjoy most, while mentoring or contributing guidance to others doing the parts I don't, while not having to do them myself. I am an IT professional for a school district. While I love what I do, it's mainly the people I work with that make me love it so much. Excellent work atmosphere and culture that makes you want to show up for work. I'm a freelance graphic designer. I get enough work to be able to pay my bills and live reasonably comfortably, and I don't have to work that many hours a week, which is the biggest plus, so I have tons of time to hang out with my cats and work on music and play video games. I texture characters in animated movies. I texture Squidward, Gary and SpongeBob in the latest movie, Rocky and Rubble in Paw Patrol, the movie etc. The pay is good too. Preschool teacher's assistant. It's physically demanding and mentally draining some days, but 95% of the time it's beautiful and rewarding. I don't think there's such a thing as a perfect job where you can be happy 100% of the time, so I really think this is about as close to perfect as it can realistically get. It's a job I admire greatly as a parent, one I wouldn't have the patience to ever do myself. You guys enrich those kids' lives so much. I work as the head chess coach for an esports educational company. I develop educational material, professional grade educational videos, and provide live coaching for middle high schoolers. It doesn't even feel like I'm working. Call center rep for an HVAC company. Relatively stress-free, no real thinking required. Just answer phone, fill out ticket, shuffle them to the right line. I can't get over how stressful the past few other jobs have been. This is great during the pandemic. Pay is not good, but whatever. I'll have to move on soon, but I really don't want to. I wish money was not an issue. I'd be happy doing this for the rest of my life. I'm a programmer embedded on a specialized clinical data research group, and it's pretty ideal. Everything everybody uses is something I personally made. It's just comfy and secure. Pays plenty enough. Could totally be making more, but at this point I'm kinda why bother. I am an 8th grade history teacher. I have been out with COVID for the last week, and for another 5 days. I am irritated because I can't be there with my students. I am vaxxed and boosted and still caught the little sucker. Luckily his was fairly mild. Business consulting. Love to hear problems and then magically pull out solutions from the hat. Laptop. I'll typically encounter 2 types of problems. 1. Problems that I've heard before and there's already template solution for the client. I would not waste their time or mine. Won't bill a ton. Just tell them what they are doing wrong and the fix. 2. Problems that I've not heard before. I love these problem statements. Would sit with client, brainstorm, come up with solution, implement and see results. Iterate for best results. Retail sales. I work 6 hours a day, have a 5-minute commute. Always in air conditioning, never sweaty or tired at the end of the day, spending most of my day chit-chatting with customers and co-workers. That gets written off as customer engagement, while doing little menial upkeep tasks on the side. I could do a lot better for myself, at least double what I'm being paid now, but this job is so easy, casual, and has a lot of friendly faces. It's so nice. I'm afraid going somewhere else will mean working with hard-nosed buttholes chasing a buck. I've worked these places before. I am an introvert, but I consider this my social skills training gig. 2. I rehabilitate web software development teams that have serious problems. It's nice as these teams have nowhere to go but up and they really just need someone to push for very obvious changes and fight for the developers. I also get paid a ton of money and, for the most part, get to work less than 40 hours a week. I'm a supervisor at one of the world-leading auction houses. I get to work with all sorts of amazing antiques and paintings and hobnob with the 1%. Have you ever had any bad customers? I got interested in computers way back in the 70s. During my first engineering job I proposed changes to the code for some in-house factory modeling software and those changes got accepted. I bought the IBM PC when it first came out with not only one but two 8-inch floppy disk drives. Then I researched computer languages and decided to learn C. Hey, if it was good enough for Bell Labs it was good enough for me. Started doing freelance programming in tech and construction and writing my own stuff on the side. Ended up writing, and endlessly improving, software for my own company that is now used by half of the top construction companies in the world. Just sold the company and retired. And all because I thought coding was pretty cool and interesting. BTW, I had an engineering degree, never studied programming, no computer science classes, all self-taught. If I could do it, you can too. If I could do it, you can too. The trick is to start in the 1970s, when computing was a new industry and the barriers to entry were low. I'm not saying it's impossible now, but it is significantly harder. I'm a graphic designer at a screen printing company. I graduated from art college back in 2016 and was struggling to find a good fit until this last year. I finally found a place where I feel appreciated and my skills are being recognized. I'm the happiest I've ever been at any job, ever. I'm a laser and lighting designer for concerts. I get to put on the editor show that complements the music. It's 1/3 of why you go to concerts. Besides that incredible sound systems and the music itself. I'm an author, and I absolutely love it. It's tough, difficult work that requires a massive amount of perseverance and patience, but when the moment hits and you see another book on the shelves, it's fantastic. I've published a number of books, the most recent a fantastic little fantasy paperback about a dragon who sets out to earn her hoard by founding a bank. It's been wonderful to see copies of that selling on shelves as far away as Germany and Brazil, winging away around the world. I teach at a law school. The job has its ups and downs, but I love interacting with my students and I love the fact that it kind of forces me to keep learning new things. Additionally, I get to run the legal aid center of the law school, so I get to actively give back to the community. I'm a high school teacher and I absolutely love it. I love the part when I can teach students something new and to be the best version of themselves. But what I love the most about the job is how I can learn so much from these kids. Every day something new. Engineer. Interestingly enough, I just changed companies and just the simple culture change has made me go from hating my job to enjoying it. I actually took a small pay cut but letting go of the golden handcuffs was incredibly freeing. Anyone in this thread that is contemplating a similar move, the potential life enjoyment and mental health improvement is worth it several times over. Forensic chemist. Spend my days in the lab but we don't always have samples to analyze so there's a lot of chatting with co-workers and other things to spend the time. I'm a pathologist that specializes in diagnosing diseases of the bone marrow and lymph nodes. Excited to do it every day I sit down at my microscope. Sushi chef, 18 years and going. Been doing it long enough to see little kids become adults and start bringing their own family. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.